And hello again, dear Astro friends. This is Melanie with the 12 days of Christmas for the zodiac signs that are on each day of the Christmas. Okay. Today is the day of Gemini as well as Capricorn because we're counting forward and backward. So we started with the first day of Christmas on the 25th to the 26th with Aries and Pisces. Yesterday was Taurus and Aquarius. Today is Gemini and also Capricorn. And I already saw some synchronized experiences, events around that with corresponding with Gemini friends, having a session with a client with lots of Gemini, talking with her a lot about Capricornian matters of what I sometimes refer to as the old empire, old structures, old hierarchies, old operating systems that don't work anymore, that we don't carry forward into the future, into the new that is in the making, apropos and complements Jupiter in Aries now. So, yeah, I invite you also to pay a bit of attention, tune in, and see what evidence for Gemini and Capricorn wants to present and wants to come your way. Now, let's go to Gemini, and this one's probably also going to be a bit shorter because there's not so much going on for Gemini in the next year, but a quick flashback maybe regarding 2020. June 2020 till December 2021 was big for Gemini because the North Node and then, of course, also the eclipses were in Gemini, supporting the gifts of Gemini while also incentivizing us to release the shadow of Sagittarius on the opposite spectrum. So the Gemini gifts are, of course, the curiosity and yes, there's honking confirming that. Curiosity, inquiry, asking good questions, questioning the narrative. Sagittarius being also associated with a narrative, with stories that are not necessarily true and don't make sense. They might make sense in their own context, but they don't match up with let's say a Gemini is also the scientist, right? Match up with actual science. So we had a lot of that going on in those years, and questions were really important. Questioning was important. Discussions were important. Free speech was important, all of that Gemini, while at the same time also alchemy, the alchemist of dualities, not going more into debate, controversy, duality, but actually alchemizing them, seeing what sides of the spectrum have to do with the inner qualities and how can we find this union of opposites within. Now, in the meantime, Mars is in Gemini for quite a long time and currently retro. So Mars has been in Gemini since August 20th, 2022, this year, and still until March 25th, or is it 26th, one or the other, March 25th, 2023, currently retrograde since October 30th until January 12th. So we're in the sort of the finish line, retro finish line of Mars. In other words, so even more energy is currently in this whole incendiary and really kind of violent qualities of debates where people are shut down and where there's lots of warmongering actually also going on with Mars. And do we need more of that? Or how can we de-escalate this whole conflict and this whole conflict of speech at this point? the spoken conflict, the conflict that presents as debates and yeah, actually quite aggressive. And we need to backtrack because also words are war, and there's war being waged in so many on so many battlefields as I also said apropos Aries, the sign that Mars rules, where Jupiter is now, so even more of that. And at the same time, Mars is retrograde, so it's a retreat of that warrior, and maybe also finding out what this really goes back to. Where is this? What is this aggression all about? And what could be? What is it that we really want? Is a Mars question. So it would be wonderful to contribute to the energy field by doing like spiritual inquiry. So asking questions that are quite existential, so to say, in nature. So in other words, like who is the one asking and so on, right? So to come to a different vibration and to from this whole worked up and stirred up and fired up state to that is so divisive, to come back to what really in essence we are, and ask really good questions about that. Now Mars is initiating one of the initiatory planets of the new year with its special state of retrogradation, which only happens every 2 years. So you might also want to go back 2 years prior, 2020-21, when Mars was retro at that time in Aries. I don't have the exact date right now, but you get an idea, right? So what was going on with Mars in Aries, what is going on now with Mars in Gemini, what's with the news? Gemini also rules the news. So no need to mention anything beyond that. Now, what's new for Gemini in the new year is the square that's coming from Saturn entering Pisces. I'll talk more about Saturn and Pisces when we get to Pisces, but that is a new influence as one of the game changers of the year, and it will start in March the 7th, on the day of the full moon in Virgo Pisces. Yeah, so Mars teaches us lessons, often difficult ones and painful ones. And in this case, it's about really union, connectedness. All is one, all is connected in the bigger field and web of life. So again, a contrast, a much necessary contrast to where Gemini can take us, right? This and that, and how does this go together with us? All the puzzle pieces, which can make us also, I had a discussion with this client, can basically feed this collective ADHD, all right? So we're having sort of a attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in humanity at this point. People are not present, are not in a good state of being, which is Pisces, right? Being naturally connected, feeling naturally fulfilled. There's always something that's missing. There's always something we're looking for. The curiosity of Gemini meeting the longing for the unfulfilled, for what the material plane and consumerism, for example, can't really fulfill, right? Pisces is self-fulfilling. It fulfills. It is fulfilling when we're in a certain state of being, and that doesn't require more knowledge, a la Gemini, or more drugs, a la Pisces. So, what are we really looking for, right? The word Gemini also has to do a lot with words. Words are clues. And since I'm native German speaker, here is a suggestion. So the word for addiction in German is Sucht, which is very similar to the word seeking and a search, right? That means Suche. So when we are in a place of addiction, what we are really seeking. And so there's all these questions, and often in my astrology sessions, they're loaded with questions on my part. So questions that are basically engaging and not a curious question, but a question that makes you think. And so rather than answers. And so the answer is in the question in a way, right? So the question can, so it's a good practice to ask good questions that can take us deeper. And so Saturn in Pisces, as it's coming in from March on, will square everything Gemini. So if you have your sun, your moon, your rising, any planets, they get a square from Saturn during the time when Saturn is in Pisces for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. So that will be can be quite a challenge, but also a challenge to transcend one's knowledge and one's state of mind, and go into coherence, which is a Piscean theme in the energy field, where where everything is available when we are, as I said, in a certain state of being. How do we get there? Questions, right? Gemini. How do I get from A to B? But maybe your busy mind is the obstacle, and Saturn also teaches us what the obstacles are, what the resistance is. Now, Saturn, yeah, and Neptune in the meantime has been already in Pisces for quite a while, since 2012 until 2026. Of course, also squaring everything Gemini as it squares everything Sagittarius. So from Neptune even more so requires surrender, often a big surrender state and sense of surrender comes from letting go, or comes from literally also losing something, feeling loss, and then hopefully being able to transcend this state of feeling deprived, or not being able to be present with what is, but always being in what was, for example. So Neptune teaches us that everything, and together with Saturn, even a bigger teacher, right? Saturn will eventually meet up with Neptune when they both go into Aries. I thought they might meet up while Neptune's still in Pisces till 2026, but no, shortly afterwards. And I have that there. It's just going a bit far ahead. No, sorry, I have to correct myself. Mercury is about to go retro, so time to self-correct. And Neptune will go into Aries in 2025 for the first time, and then Saturn is still in Pisces. And when Neptune fully goes into Aries in 2026, that is then the time when both when Saturn, what am I telling you? When Saturn is also still in Pisces and Neptune is just on that cusp. So that will be a huge event, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. In the meantime, Neptune is squaring everything Gemini, and so does Saturn now, 2023 till 2026. So there's lots of challenges here, and also a time at not getting totally overwhelmed, which is also a piece with Pisces, especially Neptune, not getting inundated by the media, because Gemini really wants to know. And there's so much out there, potential knowledge and information, and you can easily overwhelm yourself with that, right? And sometimes when we are hooked on something, addicted, we tend to even more overwhelm ourselves, because it's like, oh, where is it? There's always this longing for more. So with Gemini, I'd like to invite you again to use that Gemini energy for inquiry and for having good conversations with friends, being curious, meeting new people, trying out something that is very, refreshing. Jupiter in Aries will really help Gemini. So that's a nice combination of newness, freshness, and new interests and so on. And in terms of Mercury retro, which I just mentioned, Mercury goes retro. Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, goes retrograde on the 29th of December in 2 days. And I noticed that effect. We've all, I guess, have some sense of that already, since it's going into storm, pre-retro storm from Christmas on, so fully this week. And so that's in Capricorn. And so that is also the other sign that is active now with the 12 days of Christmas, as I said. In forward motion, it's Gemini. In backward, in retro motion, we're today now with Capricorn. So we can tune into Mercury going retro in Capricorn. That sort of unites all that. I always love that actually about astrology, when you have a sense of the ingredients, as they call it, and then you can be very creative with perceiving what the universe presents and how things line up. So that itself is stimulating for your own creativity, because you make links, right? And then you can also see more than the parts. You can see the whole being more than some of its parts. So again, that's also very whole being more like Sagittarius, or also Pisces being more than all the sum of the parts. That can be more like a Gemini thing, the puzzle pieces, or also Virgo looks at all the details and likes to have everything in place. So so playing with all that, right? Playing with the oneness and the components that present in their diversity and variety as Gemini would have it. Then lastly, here's a Gemini new moon of the new year. That's pretty much as much Gemini as it gets, is around the new moon on the 17th of June 2023. We'll have Sun and Moon in late Gemini, which is double Gemini. That's the system of decanates. That is like 10-degree segments of each sign. So end of mutable signs have also undertone of that same mutable sign. And now also Mercury will be then in Gemini, and then we're coming closer to the summer solstice. Ooh, can you imagine? Anyway, this is as much Gemini as it gets. And if your birthday also it will be in square with Neptune, right? So that re-emphasizes what I just talked about. So it's there's so much out there that can pique our interest, or that needs to be communicated about, and yet is it overwhelming? Is it completely a mirage? You can also say, is it as all a phenomena of the mind, just it's a phenomenon that's not real? It's just a fabrication, a movie, and lots to contemplate in those regards. Yeah, and we're coming close then to the summer solstice. Mercury will be also in Gemini. Anyway, if your birthday is end of Gemini, close to that 17th, or also end of Virgo, end of Sagittarius, or end of Pisces, you can be kind of in a whirlpool, but at the same time, it's the confusion can also be a fusion of what was up to now pretty disparate parts that for you did not go together. So be open to allow things to fall into place. And I leave it with this. It was probably a little short and hopefully sweet. And I see you again tomorrow for Cancer, and also a little bit of Sagittarius. Take care. Bye.